Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Apostate Alauddin. I host live streams and I make videos discussing Islam critically, among other related topics. Welcome to the live stream. On today's episode of Dissecting Apologetics, we'll be watching several short videos by Sheikh Assim Al Hakeem. If you're not familiar with Sheikh Assim, I've done several videos, possibly a live stream or two before dissecting his videos before. So if you'd like, check out those videos after this one. And before we begin, I just wanted to remind you that, I did a video about this sheikh already, or about one of the topics that he talked about, which is the levels of heaven. It's a very fun and interesting video. I recommend that you watch it next. So without further ado, let's get into the first video by Sheikh Assim, and you can leave your live chat contributions in the live chat, and I'll highlight some of them as we go along. So first of all, Sheikh always reminds us in the beginning and the end of his videos that he charges $110 for a half hour of his precious time. I'm not recommending you talk to him, but he does say that in his videos. Anyway, let's watch. Sorry, the title of this video is, Can a Boy Sit Next to a Girl in Class If There are no other options available? So this might not seem like the most serious topic, but I think it'll show us how much some Muslims like to think in detail about what is halal and what is haram, and to what extent they will go to make life harder for themselves just to appease God or not upset God. So the question here is, can a boy sit next to a girl in school?
Turkey.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Is it permissible for a boy at school to sit next to a girl if there are no other seats available and he has no other choice, but he doesn't interact with the other person?
It's like being forced to sit in an airplane or in the tube subway or in a bus next to a girl or a woman. If there is no other choice, what can you do? The Islamic Sharia, the law, the religion, is not rigid in the sense that, no, you have to quit school. Rather, it has guidelines. So are you seriously unable to change seats? Talk to the principal, talk to the teacher, and the likes?
Okay, so he says that Sharia is flexible, right? It's not so rigid that you can't participate in society. But then he goes to say, can you not talk to the principal and get your seat changed? Like, imagine going out of your way to make it awkward for everybody. And that's, unfortunately, that's the disconnect here. A lot of Muslims think that this is the pious and, high manner way to behave, which is, I don't want to look at a woman. I don't want to shake hands with a woman. I can't be next to a woman or a girl, because what if some impure thoughts come into my mind or hers? Or even worse, what if we act on those thoughts by talking to each other, or worse? And they think that this way they're protecting everybody's, everybody's virginity, everybody's akhlaq, their morals, their purity, all that kind of stuff. But in reality, they're just making it weird for everyone. Like before you would make such a big deal to the person or anybody, around you in that situation that you don't want to sit next to this woman, no one was thinking about sex. But because of this, you've now inserted yourself into an awkward situation where you're telling them, I don't want to think about sex so much that I can't even sit next to a woman. So Sheikh Assim is saying that Sharia is not, it's not so inflexible, but you should do your best to make things awkward and try to get out of sitting next to a woman.
This is questionable. If you're unable to change your position or seating arrangements, the Islamic guidelines tells you, keep your lower gaze, don't interact, don't chit-chat, don't become friends, and life goes on.
Okay, so that's his solution. Don't talk to women, don't look at women, don't think about women. Go tell the principal is wild. Yeah,
so
I agree.
Safe.
Sorry, wait. Don't skip ahead to the next video. We're not ready for you, Sheikh Assim. That's, unfortunately, it's not just Sheikh Assim. There are a lot of believers out there who think that it is so immoral to even have a conversation with a woman or shake hands with a woman, lest you have impure thoughts. But you're kind of willing these thoughts into existence by obsessing over the topic of sex all the time. And yeah, that's true. Nicholas says woman equals sex. Yeah, who said that women's equals sex? That's unfortunately how some people view it. So let me read a super chat and then I'll get to the next little short video. It's been great so far, right? I haven't been yapping too much. We've been watching short videos. I know you guys don't like it when I pause too often, so I'll try not to do that. As trainer, thank you so much for being a member for 12 months. I really appreciate it. And George Miller gave me a super chat. I appreciate that. They're asking, what are your thoughts on Muslim Lantern? Will you debate and or debunk Muslim Lantern? And he's quite a popular dawah person in the Muslim community currently. I've actually sent him an email asking him, inviting him to a conversation on my channel, but he has not responded. And I get that kind of comment all the time where Muslims are like, well, why haven't you debated this dawah person or that dawah person, especially about Muslim Lantern? I don't need a rite of passage, right? To talk about Islam, I have to debate this person or another. I'd be interested in a conversation just because I think a lot of his rhetoric is hateful and problematic and unchallenged because he tends to bring people of less experience in speaking publicly on his channel just to humiliate them. But then he refuses to engage with someone who is more capable of having, a conversation under pressure. So I'd be happy to have a conversation with him. If you'd like to reach out to him, kind of nag him into having a conversation, I'd be interested to know what topics you would like us to speak about. I, for one time I was doing a reaction video to, I think her name was the Muslim Mum, and she had quoted him about the apostasy laws. So my first impression of him was not a good one. This is a guy who justifies harming us apostates under Sharia law, under specific circumstances, and that's how they justify it. Anyway, not a great opinion of him, but I'd be interested in having a conversation with him, just for the fun of it. So I don't know what happened to my camera. Hey, come back, please. So let's watch the next video. So far, they're kind of lighthearted. They're not the worst topics yet, but it gets worse. This one is called, These Muslim Baby Names Are Not Permissible in Islam. So like I said earlier, there are some people who go to extreme lengths to try to figure out what is halal, what is haram, how do I not upset God? So now the names of babies are a topic of discussion because some names, apparently, you're not allowed to have. By the way, thank you for the super chat, Oi. Just wanted to let you know, if we hit the super chat goal for this week, which is not a very high goal, next week I'll host a call-in live stream. So please consider helping. All right, let's watch the second video by Sheikh Assim. These Muslim baby names are not permissible in Islam.
Sent us a question and he says, is it permissible to pray witr in congregation in normal days, not Ramadan? Like if the husband and wife or the whole family praying.
Okay, seems like the first question is not really relevant. Let's skip that.
Every now and then, this is fine. Ibn Mas'ud and the likes of the companions who prayed with him, but on rare occasions, not on regularly. That is not recommended. Continue to do this and Allah knows best. Fatima says, can we name our children with angel names such as Jibreel, etc.? Using the names of prophets and angels is permissible according to the most authentic opinion. Some scholars did not like calling or using the names of prophets and messengers. And this was refuted by the Prophet himself, ﷺ, calling his youngest son Ibrahim. So calling or using the names of messengers and prophets is totally permissible. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas was known as Abu Ishaq, and the Prophet used to call him Aba Ishaq.
Okay, so it seems like there's nothing outrageous in this video, thankfully. But in summary, people are so paranoid about what God wants and doesn't want that they're worried if they name their son Jibreel or Ibrahim, that's a problem. I don't know if he goes on to talk about whether or not you're allowed to call your son Jibreel, but to be completely honest with you, I kind of don't care. And I don't think you do either. So let's skip over to the next video, but I'll answer a question first. How's Apu doing? He's fine. He's sleeping right off camera, and I'm thinking about using like an old phone as a second camera just so I can have a cat camera view. So if you think that's a good idea, let me know, and I might add it to future streams. So anyway, let's watch this next video by Asim. This one's a bit more problematic, a lot more problematic. This is extremely problematic. The question is, can I beat my wife? Sheikh Assim Al Hakeem answers.
Says about the beating of a wife, and he quoted a hadith and the verse of the Quran, etc. Akhi, the general trend is that Allah ordered men to be kind to their wives.
So far, so good. Yeah, it would be nice if Allah ordered men to be kind to their wives, but is that really what's happening?
Allah says in the Quran, وَعَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. You have to live with them in what is normal, what is kind, what is well known to people, to be accepted. You have a mother, you have a wife, you have a daughter, you have a sister.
Okay, let's pause for a second. This verse that he quotes is not the most relevant one to this question, and he will quote another one in a bit. But this sentiment of you have a wife, you have a mother, you have a sister. Let me explain that to you in other words. They're trying to humanize women by showing you how they are in relation to you as a man. So I remember this campaign that was anti-harassment of women back in the Middle East when I was younger. And the slogan of the campaign was أَتَرْضَاهُ لِأُخْتِكَ or لِأُمِّكَ or something like that. لِأُمَّكَ, meaning, would you accept this treatment if it was directed at your wife or your sister or your mother? I don't remember exactly which one they used, but it was one of those. And at the time, it seemed like such a sort of chivalry. I can't pronounce that word. Chivalry, chivalrous. This is how you know English is not my first language. It seemed like a very noble thing, right? That, wow, they're standing up against harassment of women. But the more you think about it, like in this example, you shouldn't humanize women by describing them in relation to you as a man. So it's not that she has value because she's somebody's sister or daughter or wife or whatever. Or it's not that she has value because she is a sister or a mother. Same goes with how Islam values women, right? Sometimes Muslims say that Islam values women so much that al-Jannah tahta aqdam al-ummahat, the Jannah is under the feet of mothers. But that's not valuing women, that's valuing mothers. And there's a difference. That means that a woman who's not a mother is not as valuable or valued or as valid as a woman who is a mother. So in this example, I'm being a bit too critical here, but that's my job. He tries to humanize women by showing them in relation to men.
In what is normal, what is kind, what is well known to people, to be accepted. You have a mother, you have a wife, you have a daughter, you have a sister, and you don't like people to deal with them harshly or in a violent way. So this is the general trend.
So, yeah, like I said, you don't like it when men beat your women, so don't beat women because she's valuable to somebody else. I don't think that's a good enough reason. Also, I'm not sure what he quoted. عاشرهن بالتي هي أحسن. I don't know if that's a verse. Somebody here said that is a false hadith. Maybe it's a weak hadith. I'm not sure. Please, somebody in the chat fact check that. But it's not the most relevant scripture to this question, to this problem of wife beating.
However,
I'm so sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. I know this is a serious topic and I'm taking it seriously, but the contrast for him to go on this, play some piano in the background, play some jazz and whatever, Islam values women. She is somebody's wife. You should not beat her, blah, blah, blah. However what, ya Sheikh? However what? Hit us with the however.
What goes behind closed doors is something that only the man and his wife are capable of handling. There
Fuck right off.
should be no outside interference, because whenever there is interference from the families, things go south. Also, the Prophet...
Okay, so let's revisit the logic here. So Allah says in this ayah, treat women with what is nice, and like don't be mean to them, and don't beat them because they're valuable. However, what happens inside a man's house is none of your goddamn business. Why? Because things get complicated when you involve more people. Who gives a shit? I'm sorry, but like, who gives a crap if things get more complicated once we confront the wife beater over keeping things simple and keeping the wife beater in control? Why are your priorities making things simple for the man instead of resolving the problem where the woman is being abused? How is that, however, how is that a good justification to not interfere? Because it'll make things messy.
Alayhi salatu wasalam, south. Also, the Prophet...
Wait, I gotta correct that. He said...
families, no outside interference, because whenever there is interference from the families, things go south.
So when families interfere in a situation with domestic abuse, things go south. Do they go south more than if nobody knew and nobody can do anything about the domestic abuse? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt that it's safer for the woman for people to not intervene. Like, how, from whose perspective are things worse if people intervene? Exactly. Hadi says that is manipulation 101. That is how you keep somebody subdued.
Also, the Prophet ﷺ told the companions that a lot of women visited my wives and complained to them of their husbands beating them. By Allah, they are not from among the best of you.
Okay, so this is a hadith, right? Where somebody please quote the citation of that hadith. But Aisha went to the Prophet, Aisha, the Prophet's favorite youngest wife, went to the Prophet to say that women, ever since the revelation of that verse, 434, in Surah An-Nisa, ever since you revealed that verse, women have been beaten and abused more often. And what could Muhammad do? Did he say, I'm sorry, God must have misspoken, let me repeal that verse, or let me clarify that God didn't mean beat in that verse? Bullshit. He didn't say any of that. He didn't say, oh no, maybe this verse is a bad idea. He said, those are not the best of you. What a condemnation.
Meaning these men who beat their wives are not among the righteous, the pious, those who are God-fearing.
Okay, so this is not a call to violence. Let me make that explicitly clear, but it is a hypothetical. If I were to say, if you don't like Sheikh Assim, slap him on the back of the neck. But if you do that, you're not the best followers of Apostle Aladdin. The best followers would not slap him on the back of the neck. But I give you permission, as some kind of authority here, to do that. Hypothetically, I'm not saying you should ever do that. Would you think that that covers me from any blame? Because I said those are not the best of you? You're allowed to slap him. For some reason, I have that authority. For some reason, Muhammad speaks on behalf of God, and God said you can beat your wife. But if you do, you're not the best guy. But you're allowed to. Oh, thank you, Muhammad. Wow, you saved all the women. What a feminist.
This is a strong warning from the Prophet ﷺ.
It's not a strong warning, because he didn't say those are not the best of you and they're going to hell, or like those are kuffar or something. He didn't say any of that. He just said, it's not great. You could do it, but it's not great.
Now, when...
Oh, also, pause. Umar ibn al-Khattab beat his wife. Am I not correct in remembering that? Umar ibn al-Khattab is one of the people who Muhammad had promised or given the good news to that he's going to heaven. He's guaranteed a seat in heaven. He's one of the people that Muslims look up to, or Sunni Muslims look up to. Is he not the best of Muslims?
We judge things. We don't as Muslims, refer to the United Nations.
There we go.
We don't refer to the Geneva Convention. We don't refer to man-made laws made by the disbelievers and the kafirs. We refer to the Quran and the Sunnah. So if you go to verse 34.
Before he talks about that, this sentiment, right, of like, why are you following man-made laws or man-made guidelines about human rights? Ugh, who cares about human rights? How can humans know more than Allah? So why are you even bringing up these questions? If Allah said beat, then you beat. That's essentially what he's saying here. He's like, don't fall back on feminism, on human rights. None of these man-made concepts. If Allah said to do something, then you do it. But simultaneously, here's the double speak. Those are not the best of you. But also, you could do it. And also, nobody's allowed to interfere in your family and in your household. You can beat the hell out of your wife, and no one's allowed to say anything about it because it complicates things. Which is it, Sheikh? Choose a lane. And that's the problem with all of these Muslim preachers. Categorically, pretty much all of them. They cannot deny the verse. They cannot say, this verse is bad. It has caused so many women to be abused, and Allah was wrong. Not one has the backbone, the gall, the balls, whatever you want to call it. Not one has the ability to say, this is a bad verse. This was wrong. Because they're incapable of it. Because if you say that, you're a kafir, and they cannot take that step. So anyway, he's kind of backtracking here. He's like, well, don't ask a man what he does in his house, but also those are not the best of you, but also don't listen to the UN.
Chapter 4. I'm giving you the reference. وَاللَّاتِ تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنْ. Those whom you fear their disobedience, their rebellion. What to do with them, the women? Then you should advise them. You should give them counseling. You should remind them of Allah, of how bad this is, how sinful it is. And that...
Okay, let's talk about this verse for a second and about his commentary. Verse 434. I can recite it from memory, unfortunately. وَاللَّاتِ تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ. That's the relevant part. And those who you fear their disobedience. Actually, let's start from the beginning. الرِّجَالُ قَوَّمُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ. Men are dominant over women. Some translate it as caretakers of women. Still infantilizing, not better. Because بِمَا فَضَلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Because of what God has preferred some of them over others, meaning because of the preferences, the advantages that God has given men over women. وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. And because of what they spent from their money. So all that money that Muslims say is a right for the woman to have, that her husband is supposed to provide for her, well, that's with strings attached. He is dominant over you. And Allah says it explicitly in that verse, or the author says it explicitly, because of the money, the advantages and the money that he spent on you. وَاللَّاتِ تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ. And those who you fear their disobedience. Let's focus on that part. You don't even know that she's disobeying. You don't even know that she did something wrong. It's not that you fear her hurting you or hurting your children, or you fear her like something. It's disobedience. The focus is on whether or not she's listening to you obediently. Okay, so when they try to bullshit you and say, well, it's a last resort if she's like trying to hurt the kids. No, it's not about that. If you suspect that she's disobeying you, if you fear her disobedience, فَعِظُهُنَّ, advise them. So if it's a situation of marital dispute, or like either of them could be wrong, what is there to advise about? Like if you're having a conflict, how can you advise your wife if you're wrong? Are we implicitly saying, if we agree with this verse, that all men are right in any marital conflict and all women are wrong? Bullshit. Come on, let's be real. So if you fear her disobedience, advise her. This is like a father talking down to a daughter. Like, you know, like there's a hierarchy here. You advise her. You're not communicating with her. You're not trying to resolve the solution. You're advising her. You're talking down to her. فَعِظُهُنَّ, give them wisdom. As if you, as a man, hold all the wisdom and the woman doesn't. وَهْجُرُهُنَّ, and then separate from them, desert them is what it means. Like separate from them in the beds. وَهْجُرُهُنَّ means, separate from them. وَهْجُرُهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, I believe was one of them. And separate from them in bed. وَضْرِبُهُنَّ. It doesn't even say as last resort. It doesn't say lightly. It doesn't say any of that nonsense. And beat them. And then there are hadiths that say, well, you don't hit her on the face, you don't leave a mark, all that bullshit. Still abuse. That is the verse that he's quoting. So not to let you, be swayed by any of the stuff that he's going to say right now, but let's hear him out.
They are doing something that Allah does not love. فَعِظُوهُنَّ. If this doesn't work, وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, then you have to abandon them, but this is only in regards of intimacy. So you sleep with her on the same bed, but you don't have any intimacy. You don't hug her, you don't kiss her, you don't have any...
Oh no, he's going to withhold sex from his wife. The man who's probably focusing on his own pleasure is not going to sleep with his wife. What a punishment this is for her.
Hanky-panky. And this goes on like the issue of advising her for a while, not for a day or two, or for a moment or two, maybe for...
Sheikh, if you can show me where in the Quran it says advise them and wait a couple of weeks. First of all, we've already covered why advising them actually is bullshit. But show me where in the Quran it says advise them and wait a couple of weeks. Show me. If you do, I'll take off my mask right now. If somebody can find me where it says in the Quran, advise them, take a couple of weeks, and then maybe think about beating them, I'll take my mask off. But it doesn't say that.
Couple of weeks, 3 weeks of advising, didn't work, then abandon being intimate with her for 3-4 weeks. This doesn't work. Then the last and third and final resort is to beat them. So
they always say it as like, the final resort. Like, the guy tried everything, guys. He tried talking down to her. He tried withholding sex, which, let's pause for a second. Let's assume you're actually good at intercourse. Let's assume your wife likes having intercourse with you, which unfortunately for a lot of these people is not the case. Let's just assume that is the case. In a healthy marriage, in a healthy relationship, it is not healthy, it is not advisable, it's actually abusive to withhold intimacy in any form, even like to withhold speaking, or to withhold, if he wants to call it hanky-panky, to punish the other person. If you want to talk about a problem, you talk about a problem. You don't take away somebody's toy or somebody's needs unfulfilled till they change their mind and obey you. That is abuse. That is not how you fix marital problems. And we might want to point to the sheikh and say, this is a stupid, this is a stupid man. This is a bad man. This is a man who's using God's words to serve his purposes, whatever we want to say. But if you are a Muslim, or if you believe that this book was sent by God, how do you reconcile God saying that? These words that mean only one thing. Don't let anybody fool you into saying that it means separate from them. It's as clear as day. If you speak Arabic, even if you don't speak Arabic, it means what it means. Why would God say it? Does God not understand marital dynamics? Does God not have a basic understanding of human psychology that not even an undergrad at psychology, you don't even need to start an introduction class to psychology to understand why this is harmful? Why is God so blind and stupid? I don't think God is blind and stupid. So could it be God, or could it be something else?
Allah doesn't say bring a baseball bat to beat them up with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Allah. That is so gracious of Allah. Allah didn't say beat them up with a baseball bat. He just said you can beat them. You could talk down to them and weaponize intimacy. You can be in control of their finances. You can be their lifeline, but don't beat them with a baseball bat. How generous.
Abbas, when
Oh, yeah. This is also, by the way, an excellent point. Alien, thank you for bringing this up. The way men can just withhold intimacy, but women are punished by angels if they do it. So this is in the hadith, not the Quran, but it has been repeated to a lot of women, unfortunately. There's a hadith that says that a woman who denies her husband intimacy without good reason being she's on her period or she's sick or something. But if she's not in the mood, she's denying her husband intimacy for no good reason. And if she does that, the angels would curse her. And somehow that's supposed to like hurt her or something. So women are at least emotionally blackmailed with this idea of angels praying against them or something. But men get to use it as a weapon when they fear a wife disobeying them. How is that fair or wise?
is one of the great interpreters of the Quran. Allah doesn't say bring a baseball bat to beat them up with it. Ibn Abbas, when who is one of the great interpreters of the Quran, was asked how to beat them, he said, with this.
There we go. So, Sheikh, if I tell you what to do with this stream would not be monetizable anymore. Put it in your drawer. So, as this commenter, Kreese, is saying, it's supposed to be as light as a miswak. What's the point of that then? So it's funny how the Sheikh quotes this greatest interpreter of Quran. Is he Muhammad? Is he Allah? Okay, like some guy, many, many years after Muhammad died, generations after Muhammad died, said, by the way, it's supposed to be with a miswak. It's like a toothbrush or a little stick. Let's pause and think about that for a second. First of all, if that is what Allah intended to say, and nobody figured that out except this one guy, and then later some people thought that that was reliable, then what about all the men who sincerely thought God was telling them to beat their wives? God gave them no instruction except that you can beat them. Whose fault is that? It's the stupid author who didn't remember to say, by the way, guys, it's just ceremonial with a miswak. That's number one. Number two, what does that achieve? If you're having a marital dispute or your wife is disobeying you, not that it's your position as a man to dictate what your wife should and shouldn't do, in a couple, you mutually agree on what your limits are and what you are comfortable with your partner doing in any context, including where they go, how late they stay, all that kind of stuff. But if you're fearful that your wife is disobeying you, billahi alaikum, like, please, what does this do? Like, just imagine you're like, don't do this. Don't do this. Say it doesn't hurt her or it does. What does that achieve? What does that really do? Do you think we're stupid? Awesome. Like, do you think we're idiots? Do you think Muslims are idiots? Is that who you're preaching to? Like, when you say this is what you do, but in the same video, you're talking about how what happens in a man's house is, don't involve other people in it. Do you think other people would get involved because somebody's doing this? That's the equivalent of me being annoying with my partner and just poking them, right? Like, I'm poking them, they're like, stop. And I'm like, and I keep doing this. Do you think their family would get involved because I keep poking them and keep being annoying? Of course not. This is about violence, so don't bullshit us. Don't play us for fools. Don't play your audience for fools. Awesome. You can't speak about one thing and then the opposite. If women were getting beat to the degree that their skin would turn green, and that's what the hadith says, that a woman was complaining to Aisha about her skin turning green from how bad she was beaten, Muhammad didn't say, you misunderstood the verse. He didn't say, you're supposed to just touch her with a miswak. He didn't say any of that stuff. So who are you bullshitting? Are you bullshitting Allah? Do you really believe in the stuff that you're saying? Awesome. And also, let's say it's actually this. Somehow Allah forgot to say that it's actually this. What does this achieve? How infantilizing is this? Like, maybe with a child, right? Maybe if that is your style and you want to discipline your child or, like, show them that they're in trouble, you do this. I don't know if that's the best way to go about it, but maybe you do that to a child. Can you do that to an adult? What does that achieve? Does that make them more sympathetic to your point of view? Absolutely not.
You see this twig? If I
Put it in your drawer, Sheikh.
beat myself with it, I'm not going to be affected. He said, you beat them without breaking a bone, shedding blood.
Did you hear this, guys? You can beat your wife, just make sure not to break any bones. How generous. Okay, again, this is not a command, this is not a suggestion, not an implication. Hypothetically, if I were to say, you can go give Asim a hit on his forehead, but don't break a bone, don't leave a mark. You can just ceremoniously tap him on the butt. Do you think he'll be okay with that? Just take a guess.
Leaving a mark and avoid the face. What kind of
Thank you for avoiding the face. How nice of you.
beating is this, my friend?
So we have examples in the hadith of men around Muhammad, including Muhammad, beating a woman in their life. And it wasn't a tap. That kind of beating. Awesome. Don't play stupid.
Well, this kind of beating is not meant to be physical. It is meant to be sentimental, something that would hurt her, to open her eyes, to see how disobedient she is and how bad as a wife she is. After all the love, my husband is beating me with a twig. So this kind of beating is a...
Okay. Let's try to explore that angle for a second. So the entire dynamic is the man is the judge here, right? If you decide that if you fear that she's disobeying you, you withhold things from her, you hurt her sentimentally, is what he's saying. That's the best case scenario, which is bullshit. The best case scenario is that you hurt her sentimentally. Who the fuck gave you the right to hurt her in the first place? Why do you speak for God? The fact that this is even a question, like the fact that this is a video on YouTube where people go to for guidance, can I beat my wife? And the first answer is not no, you should go to jail if you do that, is crazy. The fact that there's even a discussion about this is crazy. The fact that he thinks that God gave men the right to judge that in this situation, I am above the woman and I get to humiliate her, even if ceremoniously or whatever the heck he said, sentimentally. How does that fix anything? And by the way, when they keep saying, don't leave a mark, not in the face, remember how Muslim women dress? How there's barely anything visible of them to begin with, any skin. So if you leave marks elsewhere, or if you don't leave any marks, no one's going to notice, right? Even her female friends might not notice that she's being beaten. And if, what happens in a home stays in a home, then how can a victim ever get help? If people like Asim say, don't get other people involved, how can a victim ever get help?
Form of reprimand, not slapping her on the face, not slapping her on the shoulder and leaving marks of your fingers on. This is not permissible. It should not leave a mark on the body. It should not shed blood. It's only to reprimand, and this is for the purpose of getting things back to normal rather than divorce and Allah Azza wa Jal.
Okay, that's a good point. So, first of all, the fact that this idiot says, don't shed blood, as if that is so merciful. Thank you for telling men to beat women without shedding blood. Again, hypothetical, if I were to say, go slap Asim on the face, but don't draw blood. Just don't leave a mark, don't draw blood. Would he think that's okay? And when he says, this is to prevent the worst case scenario, what did he say? What was the quote exactly?
Getting things back to normal rather than divorce and Allah.
Getting things back to normal rather than divorce. If normal is to live with a man who thinks he can beat you in any capacity, fuck that normal. Get out of that relationship. But to him, the priority, and to Allah, the priority is to prevent divorce, not to have a functional relationship, not to leave the person and get with somebody more compatible, somebody who respects you more. But he says, don't divorce. That's insane. That's insane that is what we should be focusing on, is to humiliate your wife till she obeys you and that you don't get divorced. Ambi says, so much of his arguments are for saving face. Don't leave marks. You shouldn't beat your wife because society doesn't like it, etc. They don't have the stones to say, and the ones who do we find deplorable. But even people like him don't have the stones to say, my God accepts wife beating. My God encourages wife beating. He doesn't say that. So General Ali, let's see this defense. General Ali says, okay, I agree, no one should be hit. Well, you're better than Allah, congratulations. But the way it is used is especially wrong to make Islam look worse, is not sincere, since when it is seemingly normal for people to beat kids, it is not normal for people to beat kids though. Okay, that's the thing. There are many cultures around the world where they beat kids. And now people are learning that is not good. That is bad. So just because other people do a bad thing doesn't mean that therefore Islam is okay for doing a worse thing. It's insane. Like, and Ali, you're saying that you don't agree with beating, like no one should be hit. Tell that to Allah. How are you still a Muslim? How can you read this Quran and think that this is perfect? This is the best anybody could come up with, let alone this is the best God could come up with. Okay, let's see. There are a bunch of other videos. Let's take a simpler one, and then we'll get to another problematic one about the niqab. So in this video, oh wait, before I do that, I forgot to read the super chats. Thank you, everyone. Let me first get Asim's advertisement off screen. So let me read a few super chats. Harry says, it's so brave of you to confront and question your core beliefs of religion and to be so vocal about it. You're a beacon to so many others. I really appreciate it. I don't like reading self-congratulatory comments, to be honest, but I will because it's a super chat. Thank you, Malik Mage. Says, I hope you get to complete your goal, which we have, by the way. So I really appreciate it, everyone. There will be a live stream next week, a call-in live stream, so stay tuned for that. Calvin says, can we beat Assim Al Hakeem lightly? Again, not a promise or a threat or even encouraging anyone to do it. They're making a joke based on how Muslims say that Allah says to beat your wife lightly. Matt Oxa, thank you for the super chat, says, as an ex-Muslim, funny how the Quran never speaks of men being disciplined when they need it the most. Agreed. The Quran doesn't say when you have marital disputes, here is how them, or if the man is overreaching, if the man is harming the woman, here's what she needs to do. It doesn't say that. At most, there's an insinuation that you should reach out to the elders of the families to talk it out. But at the same time, Asim says, don't involve anybody else. So which is it, Asim? Are you going against the Quran? The Baker, thank you so much for the super chats. I really appreciate it. Same again from Matt and the Baker. That's so generous of you. I really appreciate it. And lastly, Ambi, Quantum Yiddish says, a grown man saying hanky-panky and being dead serious is so strange. The stigma caused by purity culture is so pervasive in even the way you speak. You know what? I hadn't really highlighted that enough. Yeah, the guy's talking about beating women, about domestic violence, and he gets to say hanky-panky with a straight face because he doesn't want to say sex. Because he can't say it because purity culture. Oh, yeah, this is taking years off of my life. This is why I don't do these reaction videos so often, because it is exhausting listening to those people. But hey, I do it for you guys to help you see the steps that I take to think critically about their words, because I know that a lot of you, and I've gotten this type of comment a lot of people say, like, just a couple of years ago, I used to watch this specific video and think that he delivered a decent answer or that he sort of made sense. But if you pause and think, you realize all the little all the little words where obviously he doesn't make sense. So this video is, if Allah doesn't have a gender, why do we refer to Allah as he/him? Let's see what he says.
From India.
Wait, pause for a second. There's always a very confusing comment that I would like to highlight. Like this is one example. Spiritual Eurasianist says, purity culture. Of course the Jew dislikes purity. Is Jew being used as an insult against me or something? Do you think that I'm Jewish? And if so, why is that supposed to be an insult? Very confusing. Do Jewish people not like purity culture? I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Sheikh,
Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah.
Sheikh, I have two questions.
You can ask only one.
If Allah doesn't have any gender, then why do we refer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as him or her?
Why do we refer to Allah Azza wa Jal as what?
Why do we refer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as him or he?
First of
all, it's funny how he said you can only ask one question. If you want another one, you pay $110.
all, the Allah Azza wa Jal does not have a gender. And the angels do not have a gender. And the Arabic language, we have two genders, either the masculine or the feminine. So now when we would like to refer to Allah Azza wa Jal, what should we use? We use the most honorable of the two.
Okay, pause. First of all, the Arabic language only has he and her, like him and her. It doesn't have it, right? So there is no concept of it in the Arabic language. Allah could have chosen or designed a language, or he could have made Arabic have an it, or he could have chosen a language that has an it. So if it wanted to be genderless, it would have been. Allah could have been a they, them / it. But there's a verse where somehow, I don't remember all the context for it, but the verse said, "Alakumul dhakaru wa lahul untha." There was some kind of dispute where the polytheists around Muhammad were claiming that Allah has the angels as his daughters and that their gods have like male gods or male demigods or something of that sort. And the verse was contesting that, saying, "Tilka idan qismatun dhiza." This is a bad division. How come you get to say that Allah has daughters and your gods have sons, or something to that effect? Why is it such an insult? Like that feminine things are insulting. So here Asim says there is no word for, aside from he or she. So we use the one that is most honorable. The question begs itself. It begs itself. What is dishonorable about her / she/her?
Or the feminine. So now when we would like to refer to Allah Azza wa Jal, what should we use? We use the most honorable of the two, which is the masculine pronouns. And this is why when we refer to Allah, we say Allah, he, or huwa.
Okay, what is dishonorable about calling God a she? Like, you know how some people say that Mother Nature is, in some sense, a spiritual goddess to them? Muslims find that laughable. You think God is a woman? So funny. How could you think that God is a woman? And I find that laughable because, if anything, if we're going to be gendering gods, who gives life in this world? In most species, what gender gives birth? I mean, obviously it's a collaboration between the two genders, but which is the one that contains life? And then when the time comes, either, spits it out as an egg or as a developed little thing, it's the she, it's the woman, usually. So why wouldn't God, supposedly the source of life, what's so insulting about God being a her? Let me tell you the answer. Because Allah is essentially the ego of man amplified to infinity. If you see how Allah promises things to men, that's convenient. If you see how Allah puts men over women, that's convenient. If you see how Allah gets angry and jealous and emotional the way that a man does, how Allah promises a life in heaven that is essentially how male kings want to live, it's all so male man-made that it's only befitting for Allah to be a he/him. And it's only insulting for Allah to be a her.
That's why we recite in the Quran, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. It is Allah al-Ahad. We use the pronoun huwa. So this is due to the fact that in Arabic we have only two pronouns. What would we use to refer to Allah? And this is what Allah...
LOL says, it's like telling a man he's acting like a girl to insult him. Being a woman is the worst thing you can be, and it shows in the treatment of women. As I mentioned in my previous video, which you really should be watching, it refers to some stuff Asim has said. The way that women are not just treated and you know, addressed in the Quran, and the way that men are allowed to do things to women, but also the way that the Quran promises men slaves, concubines in this world, that if they go fight with Muhammad, they can have a woman to own and sleep with. They can have men too, but not to sleep with. And women can't sleep with their male slaves, but they can have women to sleep with that very messed up power dynamic. The fact that in heaven they'll get some kind of soulless, essentially, again, a slave version of a woman for them to sleep with as many times as they want. They're dehumanizing women. Even if they're not dehumanizing the woman you're married to or your daughter, they're dehumanizing women as a gender. So to them, it is so insulting. How can God be a woman? And maybe Asim doesn't go this far in his thought process, but on some level, subconsciously, I suspect it's there. A woman has, you know, female genitals. A man has male genitals. If Allah is to have either of them, which we don't know if Allah has anything, but if he were to have something, it makes sense that Allah has a big hog, not that Allah would be receptive to something else's hog, if you know what I mean. So it's so offensive to them, the idea that God could be penetrated or that God would have genitals that aren't manly. I suspect that's why.
Allah referred in the Quran to himself. So we stop at here and use what Allah has used.
Okay, so the answer in summary is that God said we should call him a he. So respect pronouns if it comes from a book. Don't respect pronouns unless it comes from a book, a very special book. Otherwise, we should not be respecting pronouns. That's the position here. All right, well, let's take another video. I'd give you options, but honestly, for people watching this afterwards, I don't want them to wait while we vote. So this one's going to be a bit risque again. Let's see. Let's put him back on screen. Sheikh Assim, welcome back.
Abu Bakr from Zambia.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. And you are?
This question is called Getting Aroused, or this video is called Getting Aroused or Having Sexual Thoughts During Prayer.
Abu Bakr from Zambia.
Yes, Abu Bakr.
I want to ask about the ruling in having sexual thoughts during Salah, and if the sexual organ erects, what's the way forward there?
Chop it off.
Holy shit. Okay, I did not watch this before, so I apologize. Chop it off. That's his answer. So, first of all, I feel for the person making this call, because the degree of anxiety that Islam puts you through, where you have to be so scared of your own sexual thoughts that you don't want to have them. It's not like you can prevent thoughts from happening, but somehow you're supposed to feel guilty if you do. You're supposed to feel guilty if you ever have like any sort of arousement, even if it's beyond your control, or if you didn't make it happen during prayer, that's so shameful and so guilt-inducing, even though God can see you all the time, by the way. God can see you sleeping with your wife. God can see you taking a shower. God can see you all the time. But if you do it accidentally while you're praying, you're aroused because of the way God created you, chop it off.
What is this, ya Abu Bakr? What kind of a question is this, Akhi?
I'll tell you what kind of a question it is. This is the kind of question that comes from the degree of anxiety that Islam instills in you. I don't know, maybe the caller is actually trolling. They're probably not.
Now, you tell me, these sexual thoughts, are they coming intentionally or forcefully?
Unintentionally.
If it's unintentional, then you cannot do anything. What are you going to do?
Then why tell him chop it off? Yeah, Sheikh, wait and ask him the question and listen, and then say, well, if you can't control it, then there's no need to be anxious about this question. Like, let me play Sheikh for a second. He asked me that question, and I say, well, are you doing that intentionally? And the guy says, no. And I say, well, I understand why you'd be anxious about this, but there's no need. Allah is all understanding. Allah knows your intentions and lack of intentions in this situation. Allah will not punish you for this, and Allah knows best. That's all you needed to say, Hasim. All this money that people pay you, and you can't even learn how to talk, how to communicate effectively, how to be empathetic, how to listen.
Shaitan is overwhelming you and you get these thoughts. You have to block them. You have to seek refuge in Allah from shaitan and say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, and try your level best to concentrate on your salat.
Okay. I'm sorry for pausing so often, but this is, it's at the end of the video anyway, but this is so important to say. The idea that the devil is behind your arousal, stupid, idiotic, not true, okay? That is categorically not true. I don't believe in the devil, but even if there were such a thing as the devil, the linking arousal or sex to guilt, to the devil's work, is so harmful. Somehow, Muslims are expected to be virgins and have no experience whatsoever and chastise themselves and feel guilty for even having arousal, not even look at the other gender, not even talk to them. And after all that, they're supposed to flip the switch and somehow get married, have kids, have a satisfying sexual life somehow, weaponize sex against each other, or at least the man can weaponize it against the woman. Just flip the switch like that. How? If not with experience, if not with trial and error, if not with an empathetic and understanding approach, a factual approach to sex, how are they supposed to do that? If you tell people that the devil is behind your erection, how are they not going to have guilty thoughts every time they get an erection? How are they supposed to have healthy erections in the future? How do you know anything about this world, Sheikh Assim? Like, how do you think that you somehow have a connection with God, or you have a book that had a connection with God, when you can't even understand basic human physiology? The devil has nothing to do with your erections. Can't even believe that I'm saying this. There are two relevant videos that I have to plug right now. There's a video I don't remember the title of, but I made over a year ago called something along the lines of Sex in Islam, my story with sex in Islam, something along those lines. I talk in it about some of this guilt. And there's also, I think that's the one video that is relevant here. And I mentioned in it that thinking of Hur al-Ain got me bricked up during Isha prayer. And somehow this video reminds me of that. So, I'm glad I didn't chop it off. But don't listen to the Sheikh about anything, let alone about sex. Okay, let's do a couple more videos. Let's start with this one. This one says, is niqab mandatory or voluntary? So I started watching this one, but I didn't actually get through it. So for those who don't know, I can't show you on the screen right now. I think it would distract us a little bit. But a hijab is what women wear around their hair. And also it's like the way they dress altogether. So they're supposed to cover their arms. Like essentially hands and feet are the only things that can show, and face. Everything else should be covered. That's the hijab. The niqab is when people cover even their face and barely have a slit for their eyes, and sometimes wear gloves and socks so that you can't see their skin at all, because that might arouse men. And women exist to hide from men and serve men and, all that stuff. But yeah, that is the niqab. So the question here is niqab mandatory or voluntary? Most Muslims agree that hijab is mandatory, though some would say that it's up to the woman to wear it and nobody's forcing her. But, God's going to torture you, but no one's forcing you. But, most Muslims would agree that the hijab is very important. But this guy is asking the question about the niqab one step further. Anyway, let's listen.
Safiya says, is wearing niqab an obligation or a voluntary act? And what are the evidences from the Quran and Sunnah as why to wear the niqab? Niqab is what is known as a face veil. So whatever a woman wears on her face, this veil with an opening for the eyes, this is called niqab. And it's called niqab because of the opening of the eyes. It's naqb, which is a hole. And this is...
Okay, I described to you exactly what the niqab is, but think of how insulting this is to a woman. She covers everything except for a hole in her face. That's how she's viewed.
An obligation according to the most authentic opinion of scholars. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in the Quran in chapter 33, Surah Al-Ahzab. In verse 53, He orders the mothers of the believers, who are the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, to communicate with companions of the Prophet from behind a hijab.
Okay, let's pause for a second. In that verse, so this is the vagueness of the Quran. Muslims still disagree. Most of them say that, the hijab is alluded to in the Quran, but hijab means like a cover or a veil or a sort of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like a sort of barrier, right? So a verse that he's citing, the wives of the Prophet, and some people say specifically the wives of the Prophet, who knows? Nobody understands Allah, not even Muhammad. The wives of the Prophet are told to communicate with people from behind a wall. So we don't usually question why that is, but that's messed up. To isolate people, women, to a degree that they can't even see other people around them. Like, sure, they can see women sometimes, but they can't even be viewed by men anywhere. And if he divorces them or if they want to leave, they cannot be remarried again. They are outcasts in that environment. Allah himself, in his busy schedule, created the entire universe and wrote in it, in that verse, that many, many billions of years from now, when humans finally evolve and the earth, forms and humans evolve, I will tell the few women that Muhammad married, I say few, he married a lot, but I mean like compared to the population of the earth, I will tell those handful of women to be so socially isolated as to not speak to other men except from behind a wall. That's fucked up. But the wisdom that he's getting from it is that all women should act like the wives of the Prophet because, we're supposed to emulate the Prophet and the people around him, but especially the Prophet and his wives, and should not talk to anybody except from behind a hijab on their face. And he understands that to be the niqab.
And the consensus of all scholars of Muslims that all wives of the Prophet ﷺ must cover their faces. There's no difference of opinion upon them or among them. All wives of the Prophet ﷺ must cover their faces. And this ayah 53, whenever you ask for utensils from them, ask from behind a screen. This is purer for your hearts and their hearts.
Let's pause and think about that for a second. Again, God in his infinite wisdom created the entire universe, that most of it is empty as far as we know, right? Even if there are some planets out there with life on them, which we haven't found any evidence of yet, but most of the space is empty or uninhabitable and completely lifeless. God created all of that in his infinite wisdom, sat on it for a long time. Time is relative, means nothing to Allah, but means a lot to us. He sat on that for a long, long time, only to send prophets, which their message was allegedly corrupted, and then send more prophets, which factioned into religions and other factions underneath those religions, like Christianity and Judaism, and then sent another prophet to finally correct all of those prophets, and told them in a verse to socially isolate, because that's so important to him. And right now he's sitting, as people die in wars all over the world, as many Muslims are oppressed, as people always remind me, how can you criticize Islam when there are Muslims dying in Palestine? God is sitting on his throne doing nothing, but he had to step in to isolate Muhammad's wives. How does that make sense to anybody? If anyone else were to do this, that is a red flag, to say the least. That is a cult leader, obviously cult leader saying, God told me to control my women. And we say that so clearly, but when Muhammad does it, no, that's wisdom somehow. So yeah, women are supposed to wear the niqab because Muhammad had control over his wives.
So this is total segregation. You cannot see the one.
I didn't even say those words. He said it. Total segregation.
This is purer for your hearts and their hearts. So this is total segregation.
So God created men and women in a certain way, right? And men are different than women and women are different than men, and created men with animalistic urges that they can't control themselves. And the only way to control that is to socially isolate the women that have evolved to be social creatures just like the men. How does that make any sense?
You cannot see the wives of the Prophet ﷺ faces. This is verse 53. Now, having this at the back of your mind and moving 6 verses later from the same surah, Allah says in verse 59, Ya ayyuhal nabi, O Prophet of Allah, قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين.
Pause. So in that verse, the verse is addressing Muhammad. It says, O Muhammad, tell your wives and your daughters and the daughters or wives of the other mu'mineen, the faithful. God doesn't even talk to women. If this is God, the author of the Quran doesn't even talk to women in the Quran. You tell me it's a feminist religion, it gave women rights, it recognized women. God doesn't even talk to them except in relation to other men. O Muhammad, tell your women this. O men, do this to your women, beat your wives. God doesn't even say, oh dear Muslim woman. He says, O Muhammad, go tell your women this.
Command your wives.
SubhanAllah, it's like I say something and then he makes the point for me. He said social isolation, or was it, what did he say earlier? Whatever he said, right after I said something related to it. And now he says, command your wives. So nothing ambiguous about that.
Your daughters and the women of the Muslims. يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنْ, to lower down from their garments. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. This is more befitting that they are not recognized, so that they are not harassed.
So what is that teaching us? If you hide a woman so that she's unidentifiable, no one's going to harass her, by what freaking logic is that? Clearly, Sheikh Assim hasn't been to Mecca where women are harassed while wearing the niqab inside God's house. Clearly, he hasn't been. He's not familiar. He's never done Umrah, apparently, or Hajj. That happens inside God's house. So making a woman unidentifiable doesn't make her safer for men. Telling men that a woman needs to dress a certain way, otherwise she might get hurt and nobody can do anything about it, that makes it more likely that women will be hurt by men. So at the very least, you could tell men, cut off this bullshit and don't hurt women based on what they're wearing. But instead, he says, women wear this so that you're not hurt. I don't understand the logic in this. Maybe I'm mishearing it. Let's hear it again. By the way, this comment is really funny. Master Connor says, the Quran doesn't pass the Bechdel test. If you don't know what that is, look it up.
To lower down from their garments. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. This is more befitting that they are not recognized, so that they are not harassed.
Rima says, chop it off. Yeah, chop it off. That's a valid reaction. So he said it like I heard it. It's better for them to cover up so that they're not identified and not hurt. Like, is he talking about, like, maybe somebody can contextualize this? And again, Allah is not here with his infinite wisdom to tell us what he meant in this one book 1400 years ago. But if Allah was telling Muhammad, hide your women and the women of the people in your tribe because other tribes might want to hurt them and persecute them for being Muslim, whatever, take revenge on them, that's a whole other story. Why is your tribe so hated that other people are trying to hurt your women? I hope that never happens to anybody. And then there are Muslims who might even use that excuse to be like, well, Allah didn't mean that for everyone. He was just talking about Muhammad in those specific circumstances. But there's no clarification. And as a Muslim, you're supposed to believe that this is God's infinite wisdom, that he had the time to write since before creating us. So if he meant something, he meant it. So anyway, this does not make any sense to me.
Now, in this ayah, the command is for 3 types of women to lower their garments so that they're not identified. So the wives of the Prophet, the daughters of the Prophet, the women of the Muslims, 3 types.
There are only 3 types of women.
Now, if you compare this ayah to verse 53, where it commands the wives of the Prophet to cover their faces. If you come and compare this ayah to this ayah, the command in this ayah is for what? To cover their faces. But in addition, for the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, Allah included the daughters and the women of the Muslims, which means that they as well should cover their faces, as mentioned in ayat 53, because
the amount of fan wanking that Muslim sheikhs especially do, like if you look at this verse and you look at this verse, and if you think really hard about it, you will deduce that Allah meant this. Why are you wasting your time? All of this to deduce that Allah told all women to cover up so that men don't hurt them. What kind of ineffective idiot is that person who's making that command? Clearly it doesn't work. If anything, it's more harmful to make it normal for men. The idea that if a woman is not covered enough, it's just expected that she'll be harmed. You have women walking in short shorts in many countries, and they're not as much of a target or as scared for their safety or anything like that as a woman wearing a hijab walking around Jordan or Egypt or something. So what's the logic there? Women get harassed in Mecca, in Al-Haram. What's the logic there?
the mothers.
Also, by the way, that was a great comment. I can't find it anymore. Oh, LOL says, maybe it was when Umar was harassing Sauda for going to the bathroom at night. So there's a hadith about Sauda, one of the Prophet's taller and older wives, going to use the bathroom at night, and they didn't have rooms and bathrooms, so going to the desert to, poop or pee or something. And Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the Prophet's closest men, saw her shadow in the night, and he yelled, "I recognize you, I identified you, Sauda." And he told Muhammad, "Cover your women." And then this verse was revealed. I don't remember if this was specifically, don't quote me on that actually, if this verse was revealed for that reason, but that hadith happened, and then at some point Muhammad told his wives to cover, and a verse was revealed. So it's so funny is not the right word. It's so clearly man-made that when a guy around Muhammad has an idea, God's like, oh, right, what was that verse that I wrote a long time ago? Right, cover your women so that they don't get identified. You mean like what your friend did? The guy was harassing a woman using the toilet, and now we have a verse, and billions of women have to follow it?
Of the believers are joined with them in this command in Ayah 59.
Also, thank you for reminding me, this commentator is reminding me that there was a verse, a hadith, where Umar ibn al-Khattab saw some slaves wearing a hijab. I can't remember if it was the hijab or the niqab, but I believe it was the hijab. And he beat them. So don't fucking tell me those who beat their wives are not the best. Umar ibn al-Khattab was going around beating everybody's wife, everybody's everything. And he beat them and told them, why are you pretending to be, or why are you dressing like the free women? He told them, this hijab is not for you. It's to protect the free women. So the opposite must be true, that slaves are fair game. that a non-free woman not wearing a hijab will be harassed, and that's expected, and she shouldn't even get the protection, the societal protection that they had at the time of, this woman belongs to somebody, so don't touch her. That's what the hijab meant. But somehow, even a slave is not allowed to be more modest. Like, they talk about modesty and morality and all that bullshit. But if that was the case, then they'd be happy if a slave was to wear a hijab. But I'm going to beat a slave for wearing a hijab. So what's the logic there?
There are a lot of other evidences mentioned in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which is logical. But before it's logical, it is.
Which part of that was logical? I'm sorry, what?
Is mentioned in the Sunnah with them in this command in Ayah 59. And there are a lot of other evidences mentioned in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which is logical.
So the verses say so, and a lot of evidences in the Sunnah, I don't know what they are. I doubt they're logical, but somehow all of this is logical. We see the evidence today that none of this actually fixes violence against women. Your religion allows, dictates, encourages violence against women. You did in another video saying, don't interfere in what happens in a household. And then you say that this is logical?
But before it's logical, it is the ruling of the Quran and the Sunnah according.
Thank you for being honest. Before it's logical, so it is logical, he says, but even if it wasn't, before logic, it is written in the Quran and in the Sunnah. So if the Quran says beat your own underside, I'll do it. It doesn't have to be logical. So why bullshit us and yourself and your followers by saying that it is logical? Why? It's not logical, and you don't care if it's logical. So don't pretend like it's logical. Let's hear it again.
Prophet ﷺ, which is logical. But before it's logical, it is the ruling of the Quran and the Sunnah according to the most authentic opinion of scholars. Why do we say logical? The face of a woman.
Hold up. Let's hear this. Why is it logical? Mansplain it to us, please.
As they say, is her identity. If her identity is open to all, this is what includes features of beauty.
Wait. What do you mean by her identity is open to all? Why are you making it seem like it's her legs that are open? Like, what's with that language? Her identity is open to all? This reminds me of how when I lived in Saudi Arabia, and this was very common, like say you're at the mall, right? And there are other men and women around, and your wife is like behind you or ahead of you, and you want to get her attention. You don't call her name in public. You don't say, "Oh, Maryam." You say, "Oh, Ahmed," mother of Ahmed, because you don't want the other men around to know that your wife's name is Maryam, because that's her identity, and you don't expose that to other men. Why are you making it seem like they're mentally sleeping with her if they know her name? What is this anxiety around sex that is heightened to such an extent that it's all you can think about? What is so bad about a woman's identity being known? Why are you trying to hide her identity? So when you say her identity is open to all, what's wrong with that? My name is Aladdin. Her name's whatever. What's wrong with her name being known? Why do you want her to be this hidden object that nobody knows exists, that could be bruised, that might not be bruised, that could be beaten, and no, it's nobody's business? Why? Why are you trying to control women to that extent?
Includes features of beauty. This is when she smiles or frowns. This is where expressions happen. And if this is exposed, then those with illnesses in their hearts will be surely tempted.
I'm sorry, but the one with illness in his heart, I don't think that's what that means, like unless he has cardiac issues. But the one with an illness in his mind, or an illness of thought, let's say, or a bad philosophy on life, or on women and gender, is you, Sheikh Assim. Like the idea that, yeah, other men might find, and by the way, there's a difference between being so perverted that you want to harm a woman against her will and finding her attractive. There's a huge difference. And to them, they make it seem like one and the same, to the extent that it seems normal to men, or to some men, that if I have lustful thoughts about her, I've committed zina, I've committed premarital or extramarital sex. It's almost as bad as actually touching her, catcalling her, doing something. So might as well. If I already got the sin, might as well. To make it seem like lust or sexual desire or romance or intimacy or a crush or even finding someone attractive is on the same level as all these other things, also inspired by the devil, also the same as taking away from her choice and autonomy, to make it seem like the same thing is harmful. These are not the same thing. It's okay for somebody to see your wife from a distance and think she's attractive and then move on with their day. You don't have to make sex such a big deal that man is now obsessing for the rest of the day about her name, about her smile, about how he's tempted to have sex with her. That happens when you create an environment that you're always telling people, don't think about sex, don't think about sex. What are they going to think about? Sex. So let's hear him again.
Happen. And if this is exposed, then those with illnesses in their hearts will be surely tempted.
Yeah, surely tempted. What does that mean? Tempted to go assault her? Or tempted as in, oh, I think she's attractive? There's nothing wrong with category 2. As long as it doesn't go bother her, you can find somebody attractive. You can find a woman attractive, you can find a man attractive, and move on with your day. But to think that if somebody finds someone else attractive, they have an illness in their heart. Or if somebody finds somebody attractive, they're tempted to go do something to them or with them. That's not healthy. That's not correct.
And when the Prophet ﷺ showed us the process of getting married, he commanded us to look at the woman we are interested in getting married. A man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, "O Prophet of Allah, I proposed to so and so from the Ansar." So the Prophet said, "Did you look at her before you proposed?" He said, "No." The Prophet said, "Go and look at her." This means that if the woman was walking in the streets of Medina, going to the shopping centers or to shops or to the masjid, and she was unveiled, the Prophet would not have told him to look at her, because the man can see her. But this indicates...
Wait, I'm a little confused here. I thought he was going in a completely different direction. So he's saying this hadith proves that he couldn't have looked at her before that instance. You're about to go marry a woman, and the only time you get to look at her is right before you marry her, and you think that this is, wow, such a mercy from the Prophet. Like, he's trying to explain that the Prophet wouldn't have said that if the man who could have seen her before. So clearly that means that the man couldn't have seen her before. That's what Asim is trying to say here. But it's kind of messed up. It's really messed up to think that your entire life you're told that don't look at women. They're supposed to cover. You're not even supposed to accidentally see their smile. If you happen to see them, you look away. You don't think, you don't have impure thoughts about them, because that is as bad as sleeping with them. You're not supposed to be tempted. That's the devil, blah, 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 your entire life. Then you get to one day where somebody decided that you two would make a great fit for some reason, be it an arranged marriage or otherwise, or somebody says, I have an eligible daughter, come marry her. And then you go, you look at her once, and that's it. As if you get to know somebody by looking at them, or whether or not you find them attractive by looking at them once, or their personality by looking at them once. And some Muslims say, well, that's such a mercy that you get to see her. How is that normal? Why can't you just see a person multiple times, see what their face looks like, know what their personality is like before you decide whether or not you want to create life with them and raise children in that household, which often turns out to be broken and dysfunctional when the only contact that your parents had before having you was one look.
States that every woman, according to Mother Aisha, used to wear the veil and cover from head to toe. There are so many examples that we can talk about, but this is not the time. It is safer for a woman to hide her identity, to hide.
Okay, it is safer for a woman to hide her identity. Comment in the live chat or in the comments below. If you live in a non-Muslim country, are women in danger because their faces are seen and, you know, their names can be known? or their identity can be known? Are they in more danger, or are they in danger when they go to a place like, India or Pakistan? And it's not just about Islam, but many other factors too, but Islam is one of them. But going to like Pakistan, for example, or Egypt or Saudi Arabia, do you think that she'd be as safe or as harassed less often than when she lives somewhere where she has an identity and is respected? You tell me.
Her beauty, so that
Wait,
she's
say that
not
again?
her identity. It is safer for a woman to hide her identity, to hide her beauty, so that she's not harassed. A woman wearing the niqab.
So that she is not harassed. You see how language is important, guys? This sort of evasive language that doesn't put responsibility on anyone except the woman. It's not so that Muslim men around her don't harass her or don't be tempted by the devil to harass her, which is all bullshit that they say. He said, so that she is not harassed. She is doing that to herself. She is not harassed.
No one would come and say, whoa, what a beautiful look. What a gorgeous woman. Nobody would whistle to her. But
okay, women, again, you can vote in the comments in the live chat. Would you rather sometimes get catcalled, which still happens if you're wearing a hijab or a niqab, sometimes get catcalled, have your face and hair showing, have the freedom to be a human being, or be so hidden in a hijab or a niqab, your name not known, your identity not known, your voice not heard, you cower in the corner, a little thing that you are, and still get hit on? Which is it? Which would you prefer? Which do you feel safer in?
a beautiful woman who is not covered, she would probably be harassed in such a awful and disrespectful fashion. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best.
So, did we learn anything today? What we learned is that a lot of Muslims victim blame the victims of harassment and put the onus on the woman to cover. And even when she covers, that doesn't prevent anything because it is a mentality problem. It is not a what was she wearing problem. That's my summary here. Okay, let's watch one last video of Awesome. I made you sit through enough for today. So this is going to be the last one.
Assalamu rahmatullah.
How are you?
I'm fine, alhamdulillah.
This is also a spicy one. Are the Taliban the true representatives of Islam? Let's hear his answer.
Okay, I need to provide some clarity on this. When it comes to Islam, some people, they may not have a proper idea of it, and they refer to for example, Taliban, right? They may say that these are the ones who are representing Islam, so I don't want to learn about Islam. And as far as Taliban, they usually they tell the women to dress up or to cover yourself and all that. So I'm just wondering, when you hear Taliban.
Wait, pause for a second. The caller, I believe, has a rosy idea about Islam and says, well, a lot of people have misconceptions about Islam, like the Taliban who tell women to cover up entirely. We just listened to a video, coincidentally, about this sheikh telling women to cover up entirely. So what does the sheikh and Taliban have in common? A lot of beliefs.
Are they true representatives of Islam? Are these people that really, are steadfast on the deen, or are they just people that, distract or misrepresent Islam?
I don't know anything about them except what the media shows us. CNN, Fox, BBC.
That is not at all the direction I was expecting him to take. I thought he would say, they might be doing things for haram reasons. They might be hurting innocent people. I don't think anyone perfectly represents Islam. We're all human, blah, blah, blah. Only Muhammad, and his followers represent Islam. None of that. He goes, oh, do we actually know the Taliban? Have you sat and had a cup of coffee with the Taliban? No, you just hear about them in Fox News. I fucking hate Fox News. Okay? So I'm not defending them. But to such a cop-out to say we don't know anything about the Taliban because it's only the Western media that covers them. Go put on a vest, a protective vest, go get in a Humvee, and go talk to the Taliban yourself if you really want to know. Instead of playing devil's advocate and saying, well, we don't know how they are. God damn it.
And the secular Arab
news agencies.
Oh, wait.
Which
Secularism is
definitely they
bad
would
now.
have hidden agendas
So,
like.
wait, let's hear that again.
I don't know anything about them except what the media shows us: CNN, Fox, BBC, and the secular Arab news agencies, which definitely they would have hidden agendas like mountains. So
Okay, so let me explain for people who don't know what secularism is, because to some Muslims out there, it's a filthy word, and same for feminism and whatnot. Secularism in Arabic al-ilmaniya is the separation of church and state. That religion has no place in ruling a society. People have equal rights. People are free to live their religions and express them however they feel, as long as they're not harming anybody else or themselves. Secularism is a separation of church and state. Why they think it's some kind of devilish, propagandish ideology, dogma, it is not. You can criticize people who claim to be secular or are secular, but have other agendas or other motivations aside from just separating religion from the state. That's a whole other thing. But separating religion from the state does not make somebody evil, or does not make somebody automatically on some kind of other devil agenda. Let's make that very clear. He says, we don't know anything about the Taliban because the only people covering them are Western media, which is super influenced, which, again, I'm not saying that every media channel is trustworthy, but to say that we don't know anything about the Taliban because it's all Western media and evil, secular Arab media with agendas, who the fuck do you trust then? Islamic media? Go wear a vest and go talk to the Taliban then.
I don't believe what they say because I know that they're blatant liars. They make their living out of lying.
So when the person asking this question wanted to paint Islam, and I hope their naivety is answered by this question, by the way. I don't know much about them, but I assume that they're very naive and well-meaning. They're saying the Taliban doesn't represent Islam. Some people are misinformed about Islam. Like the Taliban says something as extreme as covering up women. You're talking to a sheikh who says covering up women is mandated. What did you expect? What do you think Islam is? Like, yeah, sure, there are more progressive expressions of Islam, but what do you think it is at its very core? If you go to the hadith, if you go to the seerah, to the tafasir, to the Quran, what do you think you're going to find there? The makings of the Taliban. You're going to find this sheikh who says, instead of answering his question and saying nobody can adequately represent Islam, he says, Taliban apologetics. I don't know anything about the Taliban. Other people have agendas against the Taliban. Then what do you know about the Taliban? Then why are you defending them with a full chest? What do you know about the Taliban?
I can see they're Islamophobe.
Guys, is it Islamophobic to think that the Taliban have problems?
So I don't believe what they say because I know that they're blatant liars. They make their living out of lying. I can see they're Islamophobe. I can see their lies about Islam or anything that's related to Salafiyya or to Islam or Aqidah or Tawheed, and how they would like to make any Muslim a criminal by default.
No one's talking about all Muslims being criminals. The person calling you is a Muslim, asking you about the worst expression of Islam and trying to get you to defend his point of view. Why are you crying about Islamophobia? You're in a safe space among other Muslims who hate the same stuff you do, who want to control women as much as you do. Who's your enemy here? Why are you crying? Why are you complaining about Islamophobia and like all the biased media? Answer the goddamn question. Do the Taliban represent Islam? Clearly the answer to him is yes, but he's ashamed to say that. He just goes and moans about how everyone's Islamophobic. Can't a militia take over a country anymore without people criticizing it? The hate, the Islamophobia.
So I don't have any crystal clear idea about this group. What I know is that you cannot represent a religion by a particular group. And
finally, he gets to the part of the answer that is at least somewhat diplomatic and boilerplate. Well, you can't judge a religion by its followers. You can and you should, right? A religion is the summation of how all of its followers are acting, or the average of how all of its followers are acting. There is no such thing as an ideal essence of Islam that is up there in the sky somewhere, that if applied correctly, the world would be a heaven. It has never happened, never will. Islam is what people make it to be. If Islam changes over the years and it becomes a lot more peaceful and progressive and whatnot, then Islam becomes whatever that is. But for the time being, if you look at the text, if you fall back on Muhammad's stories and what he did and the people around him, what they did and what happened throughout history, this is what Islam is. That is at least a component of what Islam is. So to say that the Taliban don't represent Islam in any way whatsoever, after giving us a couple of minutes of Taliban apologetics, is so evasive that essentially you're trying not to say, I support the Taliban fully and I like everything they do.
Judge that religion from that group. I wouldn't go to Northern South Ireland and see the fighting between them and say that, oh, Christianity is a religion of violence.
To some extent, I would, though. So, first of all, the troubles, as they call them, the problems between the Catholics and the Protestants, I don't know if you can point to a specific verse or something and say that caused this. Jesus commanded us to fight those people. I'm not sure. I'm not a Christian. I'm not defending Christianity. But I feel like the Taliban are a lot more explicit about the verses in the hadiths that they quote, the direct inspiration, the actions of Muhammad that were very similar. Muhammad did the same things that the Taliban are doing, that ISIS did. Muhammad and his people did it. Okay? That is a far cry from factions fighting among each other, whether or not they think they're religiously righteous in doing so, whether or not they would have fought without religion for some other reason. That's a whole other discussion. But that's not the same situation whatsoever. But yes, I can look at all the Christians in the world and the average and the summation of that and say Christians represent Christianity. Because if all the Christians were to disappear, there is no such thing as Christianity. Same with Islam. I don't think they exist somewhere up in the sky. If all Muslims were to disappear, there is no Islam anymore. So yes, you can judge a religion not just by what the worst of its followers do, but by the totality. Sorry, I can't speak today. The total, the summation, the average, whatever measure that takes into account as many people, as big of a sample as you can. Not just one particular sample. But you can't just dismiss a sample and say that doesn't count. So is he saying that the Taliban are not Muslim? He didn't even come close to saying that. He's saying, wait, pause, because this is very important. This is very important, and I've addressed this so many times, I want to make it very clear. Ibrahim says, where's your right-wing Christianity? You have to help us. Wait, maybe I'm misreading this. Is he saying that I am asking for right-wing Christianity to help us? I've made that very clear. I do not want right-wing Christianity or the followers to help us. So I just wanted to pause and say that. I've made that explicitly clear. Anyway, going back to the video, he's saying Taliban doesn't on its own represent Islam, but also I don't know if they're bad.
See the fighting between them and say that, oh, Christianity is a religion of violence. I wouldn't go to judge people by the actions of the a religion, and judge a religion by the actions of the followers. I would judge the religion by their sources.
Okay, we'll do that. So I'll judge the religion by what's in the Quran, by what's in the Hadith, by the actions of Muhammad, because those are considered sources of Islamic knowledge, right? Because the Quran on itself, meaningless. Most of it, gibberish. What is this guy talking about? Jumping from one topic to another, from one topic, from one story to another, revisiting a story in a few more chapters. Nothing ties it together without a lot of concentrated effort over many generations by many different people who disagree, and by using a lot of what happened in Muhammad's life and what was said about that. So if we consult all of these, including the history of Islamic conquests during Muhammad's time, after Muhammad's time, if we consult all of that, we see if you want that to be what true Islam is, it's worse than the current state of Islam. Much, much worse. There are a lot of Muslims now that are better than Muhammad and his followers, even if they don't know it, even if they don't admit it. So to say that I can't speak critically about the Taliban because I don't trust the liars and the evil manipulators in the media, but I trust the Taliban, or I don't want to blame Islam for anything, that's a cowardly stance to take, Sheikh.
So you want to judge my religion as Islam? Look at the Quran,
look at the
I am.
Sunnah,
I
and
am.
look at the vast majority of Muslims worldwide.
Okay, so that's exactly what I just said. The vast majority of Muslims are better than Muhammad and his followers.
Don't come to a minority.
That being said, there are a lot more systematic problems when it comes to Muslims all around the world. That, again, the whole Islamophobia angle is people trying to scare you about how that's going to affect you. And in many situations, if you're not a Muslim, many situations it won't. But sometimes when it reaches a critical mass, or if there's enough people making the rules in your area who are Muslim, that could affect you negatively. Sometimes that is very justified. What I'm sitting here and saying is not that if there's a Muslim around you, you're in danger. I'm saying a lot of it is Islam and Muslims being a danger to themselves and each other more than it is a danger to others. But that only happened after many generations of, conquests and maybe even sometimes evangelizing and integrating people into Islam, and then Islam can hurt them and other Muslims can hurt them and hurt each other. That's the concern here. So this sheikh gets all defensive about a Muslim asking him about how Taliban doesn't represent true Islam, and yet he couldn't even answer that correctly.
And say that they represent Islam because they do not.
So Taliban doesn't represent Islam after so much apologetics for the Taliban. Anyway, thank you everyone for your support, for your comments, for your contributions, your live chats. Thank you, interested guy, for the super chat. Last one I'm going to read today said often the oppressive Islamic lifestyle is compared to liberal Europe lifestyle. Muslims like to infer that one extreme is better than the other. Yeah, that topic I can talk about for many, many minutes, but I think I'll wrap up the live stream here. This is a great turnout, by the way. I just wanted to let you know I have a second channel just in case this one gets deleted, and also because I'll be posting different content there. You'll find the links either in my link tree or in the description or somewhere there. Thanks for joining today. I appreciate you. And thank you to my patrons, YouTube members, and donors for helping me do what I do. I could not do this without you. I promise to update this list very soon. I promise I will. And as always, think critically and think for yourself, and consider watching one of these videos next. If not, then Sheikh Assim Al Hakeem is going to show up in your nightmares. That's a promise.